Hey guys, I'm Pedram, a surgical resident from Melbourne, and in this video series we're discussing tips and tricks to help you pass the GSSE. In this particular video, we're going to be talking about tips for exam day specifically. So we'll go through the layout of the day, what you can and can't take with you, the types of questions that you're going to encounter, and timing the exam. Let's get started. In terms of the layout of the day, you're likely going to sign in a staggered approach, especially if COVID's still a thing, and surrender your phone. And at this point, you're going to be sitting down for a period of time before your exam begins. During this time, you are allowed to continue studying, so you can have your notes and things on you. We were also allowed to have other electronic devices on us that weren't mobile phones or watches. So interestingly, some people still had things like iPads or Microsoft Surfaces where they were able to look at their notes and continue to study. Other people chose to bring their own physical study notes, and some people, such as myself, chose to not bring anything, just to relax a little bit before starting the exam. You're allowed to talk in this period of time, so you can choose how you spend it. When you do start your exam, you'll be ushered into your particular rooms, you'll sit down, and then you'll go through the formalities just like any other exam. You'll then be instructed to log on to a computerized system, and slowly your exam will begin. In terms of what you can bring to the exam, you can bring your notes and things to use before the exam, but obviously when the exam begins, you need to put everything away. You're not allowed to have water on you, but you can bring a water bottle with you. Alternatively, that you can get cups of water while you're there. You're not allowed to bring any notes, pens, papers, or anything like that with you. When you sit down, you'll be given a pen, and you'll also have a sheet of paper next to you, which has some candidate information on it, but also can be used as scrap paper to document anything that you want or figure something out for yourself. This might sound a bit like common sense, but because you're not allowed to have any food or drink on you during the exam, you want to make sure that you're well fed beforehand and you've drank enough water or a coffee if you require it. You are allowed to do all of those things in the foyer when you're sitting there before your exam, but obviously not when you get into the exam. For my particular year, there happened to be a 2.5 hour delay while we were in the exam, so people who hadn't eaten beforehand got quite hungry, such as myself. The questions that you encounter are broken down into 4 different types. You have type A, B, X, and spot questions. Type A questions are your standard multiple choice question. You've got a statement and you've got 5 answers and you have to pick which one is correct. Stock standard, everyone's used to these. Type B questions are your statement and reason questions. So you've got 2 sentences, one a statement and one a reason, and you have to decide whether each sentence is correct, so whether the statement is true and whether the reason is true and or false, and whether the reason explains the statement or not. Both type A and type B questions will only be found in the pathology and the physiology exam and not in the anatomy exam. Then you have your type X questions, which is where you have a stem and 4 answers, and you need to decide whether each of those answers is true or false. So technically, this is a 4-part question. The majority of the anatomy exam is made up of type X questions. Finally, you have the spot questions, which are only found in the anatomy exam, which is where you are provided with an image and some questions relating to the image, which you need to answer. Now, you can choose to tackle these questions in any order that you wish. So for example, if you are quite confident with your spot questions, you can start with those. Alternatively, if you wanted to start with your type X questions, you can also do that, or you can choose to start right in the middle. Doesn't really matter. One of the useful features of the computerized program that you use is the ability to flag questions that you're unsure of. If you're anything like me, you'll find that by the end of the exam, you've actually ended up flagging about 80% of the exam. Suddenly it's not such a useful tool anymore. So maybe use a little bit of discretion when it does come to you clicking flag on those questions. One of the tips that I would give is, especially when you're doing your anatomy exam, you'll sometimes find that questions relate to each other. So for example, if you have a type X question, remember type X is where you've got a stem and 4 different distractors, talking about heart valves and perhaps their positioning. If you look through your spot questions and you actually find there's a spot question which shows the heart and perhaps some of the valves, then that question, that image may end up helping you to answer that other question. So what I did on the day was, using the sheet of paper that was provided to me, I would write down questions that were linked to each other or talked about similar concepts, so that at the end of the exam, I could go and review both those questions or those multitude of questions as a group and try and figure out whether my answers were going to change or whether I had any new information to work with. So I actually found that I got a couple of extra marks by using this particular tactic, because there were concepts that were repeated in the spot questions that I had originally struggled with in the type X questions. So definitely watch out for those. You will be making a lot of educated guesses throughout this exam, and that's perfectly fine. You can always try and remember the adage that it's easier to write a true statement than it is to write a false statement. So perhaps if you're really struggling, you can tick true for something, but obviously you want to have a bit of an educated guess rather than a complete stab in the dark. I use toilet breaks as a method to stretch my legs and clear my head, and I found that to be particularly helpful. So what I would do is I would run through the exam once. Typically takes you about 60 to 90 minutes. Then go to the bathroom, stretch your legs, get a cup of water, sit down, and then begin to review those questions that you had previously flagged. Alright, that's it for this video. If you guys do have any other questions, please let me know, and I can either create another video or just answer your questions directly. Be more than happy to do so. Best of luck for the exam, and I look forward to hearing about your successes.